Dominique Wilkins saying that NBA is scripted.
We are not the WWE. It is not scripted. Halliburton's game winner, 4-point play the other night, you can't script that, but it's a great script.
I believe absolutely that there's some bullshit with the NFL.
Stephen A is still going to talk his talk. LeBron is still going to feel how he's going to feel about it. But I think in the long game, I think they can both, use this as a growth opportunity moment. So if it's a partnership, getting his son a nepotism opportunity, he's one of the few who've earned that right.
Why haven't more WNBA players tried to link with her? And how do we fix this?
I see bird magic. People forget what that was, man. It was real hate. I see a similar dynamic. I think the WNBA should capitalize off that. Nike, whatever the shoe deal is, should capitalize off that.
On the narrative. Best in class, so pray for my peers. Slingshot bullet, it's clear. Your weak shots couldn't pierce through bulletproof ears. A martyr, a menace. I'm leading horses to drink and pulling teeth like I'm feeding the dentist. On the narrative.
Welcome to another episode of The Crossover. I'm your fill-in host while the big boss is away and playing. He lets me do this. They keep me behind the camera now because whatever. I got us censored. I didn't, but whatever. All right, gentlemen. As always, it's a pleasure. I haven't had the pleasure of shooting a podcast with either of you in, never. Keyon, you, not so much. But I'm happy to be filling in for our boy Andy today. Let's dive right in. So first story on the ticket is Dominique Wilkins saying that the NBA is scripted per se. Keyon, being a 13-year vet in the NBA, what is your what's your take on this?
So, a couple different takes.
Okay.
The first take is that we are not the WWE. It is not scripted, right? I think if you look at Halliburton's, game winner, 4-point play the other night, you can't script that, but it's a great script. So I don't think the game is scripted. However, the human element will come through sometimes, right? And so because we've had scandals, Tim Donaghy and et cetera, and things like that, you know that the human element can be a part of the game. But for it to be scripted, I disagree. There's been several times where teams were, slated to win at home, and they have the champagne out and they're ready to celebrate. And guess what happens? They have to put it up because they don't win. So I don't think the game is scripted. But I also do believe that the human element can impact the game sometimes. But I disagree with Dominique. I definitely think, the best teams playing the best ball at the best times win the game. And if the game was scripted and, you wouldn't have the gambling element that you have, you wouldn't. Players, we do not go into the game thinking we're going to lose. Everybody thinks they're going to win when you go out to play and compete and have competition. And so I just disagree with that statement that the game is scripted and champions are picked and, people are Manchurian players.
Do you think that, just to kind of piggyback off the script stuff, do you think that the NFL is scripted? Because there's also been talk of the NFL being scripted. Obviously there's a ton of players saying, oh, we got this and we got that. Do you think something like the NFL can be something that's more scripted versus an NBA game?
In my opinion, I believe absolutely that there's some bullshit with the NFL. From the first time we ever met what my thoughts were on that thing. And the reason why I feel that way is because how many times do you see on 4th and 13 or 4th and 10? Man, those are improbable conversions.
Right.
Flag. Man, it's 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10. A game just doesn't end in normal circumstances. So I agree with what Keyon says, and I would defer to him as as it relates to the NBA. He was in the combat personally. As it stands in the NFL, I've been gambling my whole life, and that shit's rigged.
So the comments that actually Dominique mentioned on that actual podcast was that they were in a game against the Spurs, and it was the last game of the season. And the coach at the time says, hey, don't be mad, but I've been told to only play you, 5 or 10 minutes because, the owner of the Clippers wants the scoring titles to stay in the West. He doesn't want Shaq to get it. That night, David Robinson goes for 70. So how does something like that play into a factor? Do you think, behind the scenes that is something that actually happens, or do you think that realistically, it's just the last game of the season. You don't want to pull the starter. You want to pull the starters.
I've never seen a coach go to one of his players and say, hey, you know what? Let this guy go off tonight. Don't touch him. Have no resistance. Let him get 70. At the end of the day, the Admiral, David Robinson, had to go put the ball in the hoop. I think sometimes when players are motivated and they have a goal in mind and they're in the zone, that they can just kind of black out and go get shit done. But as far as like Dominique saying that, hey, he's gonna play 5 to 10 minutes. Hey, at the end of the season, guess what? Sometimes you want to see the younger guys play.
Right.
Sometimes you want to give an opportunity, to guys who haven't gotten the opportunity to showcase their talent. Maybe you want to retain your talent so they don't get hurt. So you see people shut it down all the time, and that could be a coaching decision. That could be a draft positioning decision. But to say that the referees or the game allowed David to go out and get those 71 points, I disagree. He had to jab jumper. He had to get, rebounds. He had to use his jump hook.
Right.
So I just disagree with that perspective, but I don't minimize it.
Right.
That's maybe how he felt in that moment.
And if David Robinson's playing against, potentially rookies, yeah, no doubt he's going to probably go for 70 if he's trying to hit that scoring title. And he's playing against, guys I've never seen him before or rookies in general he doesn't play. I can definitely see him going for 70 at that point against, much younger rookies in the game.
Yeah, I feel you.
Nev, anything on you on this one?
No, I defer to Keyon as it relates to this. You have a priceless opinion. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the fire, man. You know what I mean? So you're not specking.
Yeah,
this is what it is.
When I saw that story, I was like, dude, I have to ask. We got to get Keyon's perspective on this. So, all right. Pivoting over to the Stephen A. Smith on the Gilbert Arenas podcast.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So a way different take than what he had on First Take. No pun intended. He was very monotone when he was talking about the first time. He was very almost like sincere, apologetic type deal. Gilbert Arenas podcast, he was a totally different dude.
Yeah.
All right. Totally different tone. Totally different, in my opinion. When I was watching, I'm like, this is not how you sounded at all. What do you think? Do you think it's been something that, with the stuff that he's heard that happened after the fact, with some of the conversations that LeBron had with Richard Jefferson, do you think his tone may have changed on that simply just because now he's like, oh, fuck that, the gloves are off, type deal?
Yeah. Well, it takes time to process things, right? A lot of times when you're in the moment, you don't know how you'll react. Sometimes you can shut down. Sometimes you could be shell shocked. Sometimes you'll peace be still. So his initial reaction, you get to have that, right?
Of course.
And after the reaction, you get reflection. And the way that it showed him and the way that he was depicted in that, maybe he felt some type of way, right? And that was an opportunity in a setting that's not traditional media where he can say, and talk. He can kind of, let his hair down a little bit. And then you have context as well, hearing the Richard Jefferson comments and things like that. It could make him feel a certain type way. And then also he was on a euphoria. He was feeling good about, signing one of the biggest contracts that commentators and analysts make. It was a setting where, he was kind of blitzkrieged.
Yeah.
It was a situation where he didn't really prepare for. And so he couldn't really, go back and forth in that moment. So he had to kind of sit in it. And so, you just have to give people an opportunity to process things. And I think he processed it. He feels some type of way about it. And moving forward, I think he'll govern himself accordingly because I think his guard will be up.
Right.
If they don't have any, conversations behind the scene, I think, they could potentially be adversaries,
What do you think about D. Wade saying that he probably could have brought them to the table had he gotten that call first?
Yeah, man, you know what? When it's Nev and I both have done time, right? And when you have an issue with an individual, if you're not going to the shot caller or something like that, right? Sometimes you see people and it happens and it's impulsive. Right. It's human nature. Sometimes, you don't plan on doing certain things, but it just happens. All the stars will align And I think that was just a moment where the stars kind of aligned and he saw an opportunity and he was feeling some type way and impulse took over. And so LeBron went and had the confrontation. Stephen had to react to it. It's tough when you're in a reactive state to, really show like how you might feel because you're just in a reactive state. You're not initiating. But in reflection, I think he feels some type of way. He's expressed that. And, moving forward, at some point, they're still going to have to run into one another.
Yeah,
they're still going to have to see one another. Stephen A. is still going to talk his talk. LeBron is still going to feel how he's going to feel about it. But I think in the long game, I think they can grow from it. They can learn from one another. They can both, use this as a growth opportunity moment.
I got to tell you something. Now I know why this guy's a life coach.
I'm mesmerized. I just want to
Mesmerized.
I just want to shoot him questions. We'll do this. I can literally.
I'm about to ask him
man,
what his fee is, man. Shit. I know we're doing a sports talk, but man, this dude's got me thinking about my life. Anyway, so that situation. I'm not a father, so I can't really speak on how LeBron probably felt. It's sort of an awkward situation, but I think LeBron's also turned it into an awkward situation when you try to force feed a narrative to the public, and maybe the public doesn't see it the same way you see it because they're not a parent of someone who's playing ball in the NBA. It's a very unique situation, right? I think there's a little bit of blame on both sides, but Stephen A. talks his talk, and LeBron feels like he's the chosen one, and like there's narratives, and I think both of them have a point, but it's a difficult spot, and I don't think there's any right or wrong, and I think Stephen A. probably does have a little bit of a personal agenda, if I would suspect, but I also think LeBron's wrong from his sense. He's trying to like just move along life without being criticized, and that's just not the world we live in. And we're in such a media now, in your face world that everything's just on check. Yeah. And there's no secrets anymore. Yeah. Like, man, there's just no secrets.
Yep.
Nick, like, can I make a little quick point?
Yeah.
So in athletics, in the NBA in particular, it's a 50-50 partnership right now, right? Basketball related income is divided between ownership and players, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Buss, who started the Lakers and got them on that right trajectory, put Jenny Buss in place. Mm-hmm. That's nepotism. That's generational wealth. That is accepted.
Yeah.
Right? LeBron, who has been the biggest, best basketball advocate since probably, Michael Jordan, because I think he ascended Kobe as far as his reach and his input and his imprint on the game.
Ambassador squared.
He has been. So if it's a partnership and a guy is standing up for, his son, getting his son a nepotism opportunity, he's one of the few who've earned that right. And guys know their value now.
Never looked at it that way.
Guys know their value now. And if it's a partnership and nepotism played a role in Bronny getting a better opportunity, so be it. Yeah, his dad did it. The same way, team ownership gets things passed down. The same way GMs have children, who run the Warriors, like Dunleavy, or like, Jerry West's kids work around the game. You can go down the line on nepotism on different levels. It just so happens that when it's players who exercise their power, and most players, 99% of players cannot exercise their powers. It's only the greats who can really exercise their powers and their influence.
Levels.
And he's been able to do it. And so I have no hard feelings on LeBron for using his leverage to get Bronny those opportunities, especially with him being so underpaid compared to what he generates to a city.
That is an incredible point.
Absolutely.
And I don't think, well, first of all, I've never heard a point like that. I don't think, that's a great point. you know, and I've never looked at it in that regard, but no one's ever broken it down for me also in that regard.
Stay up under my wing, Neil. I got you, big homie.
I mean, I'm trying.
I got you, big
I'm trying to pay the fee, man. I don't know.
You could literally
I
stand
mean,
under his wing.
You know what I'm saying, man?
I think from a father perspective, being who you are in the NBA, you probably should have coached not only yourself a little mentally. You know, you should have tried to think to myself, all right, I get Bronny into the league. I'm obviously gonna cause crazy media stir. All right. I think also what should have happened on his end is he should have been a little bit more prepared for all the scrutiny he was going to take. He's already taken scrutiny for the decisions he's made, passing the ball to Delonte West in that finals game, you know, coming to Miami, all the things that he's been micromanaged on, every little spectrum. I think from this standpoint, I don't think he was ever prepared for how I'm going to feel when somebody talks shit about my son.
I think he was prepared. I think he's at a point in his life and in his career where he's been so perfect at every intersection that he doesn't have to do that anymore.
Right. I think he's in the I don't give a fuck state.
Yeah, he like, it is what it is. I'm standing on business. I've become nothing nobody can say or do can take away from my achievements and my accomplishments. And I just feel like he's at the point right now where he's just not going to take no shit.
Yeah. Yeah, because you do remember that Boston game when he fell into the stands, that his mom got in the mix and he told her, you know, sit your ass down. You know, like it's funny to me where like, you know, I'm the man here telling my mom, but like now you're like, shit, you touch on my son, and I'm like, I'm ready to rip your head off.
But that's still being a man.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, it's funny as a parent where your natural instinct is to just, I mean, she's in the mix with grown men, you know? As a parent, your natural instinct is the minute somebody tries your kid, you're like, no, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna react. So yeah, I think for that situation, I think it's you know, it's warranted. You know, I'm a parent. You know, I see some of that stuff too, and I'm just like, man, I'll catch you outside and touch my daughter like that again. But yeah, so, you know, pivoting over to you know, generating games and what he's done for the sport. Angel Reese recently on her own podcast, stated that she's willing to have a lockout. She's willing to have a sit out, you know, if players, you know, in the league are not properly compensated, if there's not something done about that. The WNBA as a whole, you know, even with, you know, Caitlin Clark hysteria, lost $40 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about those comments?
Well, I think they're a little naive to a degree, right? Because everybody's experience is not what her experience is. I know she has several endorsements, has a big social media following, had a great college career, and is a hell of a player. And not only a hell of a player, she's got a hell of a personality. But the fact that league doesn't generate money, they're operating in the red. You can't necessarily, you know, impact and make change from the sideline. Right. I've been a part of several collective bargaining agreements. I was the 10th pick in the draft back in 2000. You look up what the 10th pick makes right now, it's a lot more than I made back in 2000. And so you stand on the shoulders of the ones who come before you, right? And some of the battles that you have to fight are in the moment. And if you want the game to grow, you want it to grow on your watch, you have to give a certain amount. You have to give yourself to the game, right? In the stages of the game, because retroactively, you may be able to get that back. But you won't be able to get that back if you sit on the sideline. You probably lose endorsements. You probably lose social media following. You probably lose all the things that allows you to be who you are in that moment. And so I understand the frustration, right? You want to be valued and get your value while you're a player, especially a young player. However, you have to fight systemically a lot of times through collective bargaining. The league has to become profitable. And the good thing about like women's basketball, there's several different leagues now. You can play internationally. There's a new league that I've been seeing, you know, with the 3-on-3 full court, which is awesome that she's playing in, and she's getting her game off in that league. But to say that, hey, I may sit out, you could sabotage yourself long term. I think it's more the timing is better if she pushes through.
100%.
Push through right now and fight for the rights. Do it through collective bargaining, and you'll get your value at some point.
I mean, the Chicago Sky last season had 16,000 ticket sales.
Total
For
Okay.
2024.
Okay.
So to me, it's one of those things where you should see that and say, how do we get that to 32,000?
Mhm.
You know, a stepping stone for her. And like, I agree with you. Her sitting out is going to do nothing for her on a career trajectory form, or for the WNBA as a whole.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I saw her comments, and sometimes I guess sometimes you chalk it up to youth, maybe just being young and naive and not really understanding. I love the WNBA personally because I see some of these females that can really play, man, and I've seen it get advanced, since its inception. And the problem is, it's exciting to watch, but it's not a great business model.
Right.
At the end of the day, right? And she's writing checks for other people. She shouldn't be writing. She's, like Keyon says, she should be supporting the cause, because in order to get that brand where it needs to go, she's got to be part of bringing it up there, not threatening we're going to sit out and this and that. What are you sitting out from? Exactly. You're losing money. You right? It's a ship that's taken on water. So, I think her commentary was premature and not appropriate for the times, especially what their bottom line financials look like.
What does it take, in your opinions, because you've both, you've built businesses, you've built lives. What do you think it takes, like something like that, for a WNBA to be profitable? Like what steps does a whole league need to take to be able to say, dude, we got to stop bleeding money? Because from what I've read, there's part of the NBA that goes into funding some of that as well. Mm-hmm. So what does it take for that league to get more popular, to increase their exposure per se? Because 9 times out of 10 people, you say, do you know that your city has a WNBA team? No, never heard of them. Right. I remember when the Miami Soul came, I was like, wow, this is so cool. You could buy lower bowl tickets for $18, which was, pretty bad. Yeah. But what does it take? Is it a product thing? Is it a business model thing? What do you think?
You have to be really careful, when you have these discussions. But, I just think that, like women are on the come up, right? And I think they need support of other women. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think they need the support of other women to come out, rally behind them, put their daughters in the sport, and, really champion the message. Obviously, the NBA and NBA players have, sacrificed to try and, give attention to the game, put resources behind the game, make accommodations better for the game and things like that. But I also think we have to be patient. It's still a young league. I think there's some transformational talent coming into the league. We got Caitlin Clark now. Juju is on the rise. Juju is coming out of USC. Paige is coming out of UConn. And so there's some transformational players that could, take the game to another level. Our game benefited from having those transformational players.
Of course.
When Magic came, the game grew. When Bird and Jordan came, it made the game bigger. When the game continued to grow depending on the talent that you get. And I feel like the female basketball players are just getting better. They're charismatic. They have the ability to shoot, pass, dribble. And a lot of them are looking gorgeous on the court as well. Yeah. And I think that's appealing as well. And so I just think, like, holistically, I think we have to be patient with that game. And I think the ladies just gotta stick with it. They're right on the tipping point of getting that paradigm shift.
Gotcha. So one more point on that one, and then we'll move. So why don't you think, all right, obviously Caitlin Clark was a huge phenom. Mm-hmm. All right, why did you think that she got kind of like the hate that she got, and why haven't more WNBA players tried to link with her, including Angel Reese, tried to link with her and say, how do we fix this? Let's leverage both of our stuff together. All right, because obviously she can put butts in seats. All right, Angel Reese has her ideas on how to be able to grow this game, even from the back end. All right, why don't players get together and say, how do we make this better? versus trashing her every, again, I'm not sticking up for her, I'm just saying based on what I read, based on what I saw all last season, instead of just, doing the things that Cheryl Swoops was doing, kind of trashing her and doing this and doing that, like, why not unify them and just all of you collectively take the league by storm?
Yeah, Nev, you got something?
Well,
to add?
yeah, I sort of like the rivalry part of it.
No, I love
You know why? I see Bird Magic. People
Mhm.
forget what that was, man. It was real hate. These guys didn't care for each other, man. And that defined the rise of the NBA. It defined the rise of the NBA. I was a young kid watching it. I watched the whole growth of that league based on that dynamic. And I see a similar dynamic. History repeats itself. I see a similar dynamic. I think they should capitalize off of that. I think the WNBA should capitalize off that. I think Nike or whoever, whatever the shoe deal is, should capitalize off that. And I think it's just good for business.
Yeah.
You need some hate, man. People don't want to see kumbaya
No, I agree.
24/7.
I
It
agree.
just doesn't. It's just not what sells.
Yeah.
Like when you watch wrestling, you need a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason Angel Reese is that bad guy, so be it.
Yeah.
In this
And this-
scenario,
The only thing is that the NBA wasn't bleeding $40 million a year in the 90s when you had those matchups. So that's what I'm
no,
saying.
well, but prior to
you gotta
that,
fix the shit before.
prior to that, they were. Prior to Magic and Bird, it was bad, man. I remember I'm a Sixer fan, right? And I'm talking old school Sixer. Dr. J, Moses Malone, Darryl Dawkins,
Right.
Moses Malone. Man, I'm watching the Lakers and the Sixers on tape delay at 11:30 p.m.
Right.
NBA Finals. So yeah, they were bleeding
Yeah.
back then.
Crazy.
So there's a starting point to everything.
Yeah, I think when you're a rookie and you come in the league, especially with a lot of attention and fanfare, I think, the people who are already there are going to feel some type of way
course.
about it, right? Look, LeBron didn't have it easy when he first came in the league. Michael Jordan, they were called the Jordan rules. With Shaquille O'Neal, they were called the Hack-a-Shack. All these different transformational players, they have certain amount of adversity that they have to overcome. And what Caitlin does every opportunity when she gets on the court is she overcomes that.
100%.
She supersedes the expectations. She gives herself to the game. She leaves it all on the court. And I think you have to respect isn't given in sports. It's earned.
Absolutely.
And I think she's earned the respect, of her fellow WNBA players. I think they see her, but they also look at her as competition.
Absolutely.
They look at her as a benchmark because she does have endorsements, because she does have this notoriety. She's the bar. And so at every night, at every time you step on the court, she's the benchmark. They're coming for her neck.
Absolutely.
That's how it is in everything that's competitive, whether it's business, whether it's real estate, whether it's being the best surgeon, whether it's being the best musical artist, whether it's being the best basketball player, across the board.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, the people at the top, you always have to worry about people coming up trying to take your spot. That's a part of the game. And I think it's
that's what
great
makes
for the game.
competition. That's what makes the competition. Like, who's like, even you look at LeBron, he's a perfect, like, who's his man, the ghost.
That's it. Constantly.
Who's pushing him, man?
Constantly. That's the only thing that he has.
The ghost,
Yeah.
right? Who's challenging him other than that, man? You need someone bringing that out of you. Otherwise, you just like, there's no competition. Like, what am I doing? I'm just here. Yeah, good point.
All right. Well, speaking of dumpster fires, the Heat 4-11 since Jimmy's gone. What do you think's going on in Miami? Why? What are they doing? This is probably the worst stretch we've seen in a while from the Heat.
And how's Golden State doing since?
Well, I was gonna, I wanted to talk about the ugly first before we got to the fancy. So, what do you think is going on in Miami? You played there. What do you think's going on through Pat Riley's, head as far as what's going on with the team? Obviously, Spo wasn't the coach when you were there; he was an assistant coach, right?
Right.
So, what do you think? What do you think the locker room's like? What do you think Spo's like right now as far as how do they fix something going 4-11 since the trade deadline?
Well, they lost a max player. They lost one of the top 25 players in the NBA. and probably one of the top 10 best players in the playoffs and leading up into the playoffs, right? So that's a big void to fill. And when you come in with some younger players, there's chemistry issues. There's not necessarily an identity, because Jimmy was the identity, right? Like, the team usually takes on the shape of your best player's personality. And when you lose such a big personality and what they bring, sometimes you can't feel it while they're in it. It's not until they're gone that you say, wow, damn, I didn't realize he did this much, probably from the coffee that he would bring in the morning, to the attitude that he, portrayed on the court. You miss him. But also, like, at the end of the day, like, Golden State making that move, it's given him a certain rejuvenation. They took care of him. They compensated him at a point in career where the team that he wanted to stay with, they weren't willing to do it at that point. They didn't see it past, maybe next year.
Right.
So, and then you have an opportunity to play with Steph. Like, Steph, it's brought him back, because Jimmy is probably the best player that he's played with, since prime Clay before the injuries.
Right.
And so I just think it was a win for the Golden State Warriors. The Heat will have to rebuild for it. They don't really have a one option. Tyler Hero is a good young player, but is he somebody who can lead you in the playoffs? Is he somebody who can, be a closer for you? I think he's more of a second option, third option, right? Bam is more of a facilitator, a rebounder, an energy player, but a great player when you have a number one scorer. They don't have that right now. Andrew Wiggins has always been a guy who, is a 20-point-a-night scorer, but as a one option, it's difficult for him. So I just think, the whole Jimmy effect, the Heat, they're going to feel it for a while, and hopefully they can rebound from it and, make a push towards the end. But I think it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I agree.
Great listening to him break it down. I mean, that's real, and it's time for them to make some, they need an overhaul, man. And I think Jimmy Butler, that situation held them hostage, and it worked out better for him, obviously, because he was able to get out of there, but he left the smoke burning in the building, right? The Heat organization is class. They do things right. And the city is amazing to be in. Why would you not want to be down here? I just think that they could rebuild this thing in a minute.
They need talent.
Yeah, they do.
They need more talent.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I agree with what Keyon says. Being a Kentucky guy, which, I'm a Kentucky fan. Tyler Hero, I've always liked. But I don't see him as the it guy. I agree. I echo those sentiments. I see him as a 2-spot, not so much a 3-scorer, but definitely a 2 second scorer in that thing.
Do you think that Jimmy's situation kind of gives Miami like a black eye? Because we saw it with D Wade when he left. We were basically negotiating for, I think it was $20 million. He wanted 24. We didn't give it to him. He left for the additional money or a better contract somewhere else. That was per year, not the total contract. But I think Dwayne's, I'm hearing like a first name basis. I think Dwayne's talked about it where he's like, he saw all these guys getting paid around him. I mean, it's a totally different situation with the contract wise. But I'm just saying from a perspective of like the outsiders looking in on the NBA saying, these guys treat their star players and they kind of push them out eventually, because we did it with D Wade, we did it with Jimmy. Do you think that puts a black eye on Miami and getting other big name superstars to come here?
No, I don't think so. Clay, you get paid for the time that you're there, right? A lot of times as young players, you get paid off of potential. And if you reach it, you might be able to get one extension with that team, but a lot of times you have to move on. At the end of the day, they paid Jimmy. He performed on a high level when he was with Miami. He gave it his all. He saw the writing on the wall. They may have saw the writing on the wall as well, and they decided to part ways. No harm, no foul. I don't think that plays a role into, getting new talent, because at the end of the day, the Miami Heat are a high pedigree organization. They run things top notch from top to bottom. Most of the people who've been working for the Heat have been working there for 20, 30 years.
True.
You know, so it's not a toxic environment.
Consistent.
They do have a standard. They do withhold the standard and uphold the standard that they have set forth. But I don't think that'll, stop guys from coming down to South Beach. At the end of the day, Florida, we are a tax, no state tax state, right? We got a great fan base. The weather is good. The women are beautiful. The restaurants are incredible. And so eventually we will, Pat will, mastermind something and get the right talent. But it's just a timing thing. And sometimes Pat will take a step back in order to make a big move.
Right.
And he's done that before. And when he comes out, he's coming out guns a-blazing.
So on the flip side, the Warriors are 12-1.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think, or how is Jimmy transitioning his game, and what is Jimmy doing for a Warriors team that was essentially out of the playoffs before he got there, and now that he's back in there, they're contenders? What do you think a player like Jimmy, obviously, aside from the fact of what he brings on the court, what do you think Jimmy's doing to that locker room? What do you think, Jimmy's resurgence has impacted the Warriors?
Well, I think, for one, they're both re-energized, both he and the Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, the Heat's been sucked out of energy. So I think it's really evident. This is what happens, and I think Keyon, we spoke about it a couple of shows ago. Like, now you're getting playoff Jimmy. This is who you want. Like, Golden State made the right move at the right time.
Right.
They got a highly motivated cat who's going right into playoff mode and hit the ground running. And I mean, it's obvious what's taking place here. Right. It's an energy shift,
mm-hmm.
a complete dynamic shift. One building got the energy, the other one lost it, and you're seeing it play out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be real interesting to see if Golden State gets in and they don't have to play in that play-in tournament. If what they can do in the playoffs with
whatever it's going to be, they're going to get hell on wheels with Jimmy Butler come playoff time.
Absolutely.
They're not. It ain't a free lunch knocking those boys out.
Yes. Big facts.
So, pivoting more to like the media side now. So, Shaq was getting some pushback with some commentary that he made, saying that Chauncey Billups is doing a great job in Detroit, but then later they catch him saying like, I haven't really watched any games, and it kind of leads to some of the criticism of some of these NBA stars on these shows, not really preparing for games or not really watching, all the games that they should. What's your take on that whole situation, and do you think he even should be getting criticism?
Look, they're responsible for watching a lot of games, right? Or at least knowing kind of what's going on. I think the production team and your team around you has to equip you with all that information. Shaq runs a lot of businesses, right? And he's not there for his quote unquote like being a hardcore analyst. Right, he's there for his personality,
right?
His big fella,
right?
At the end of the day, and I think it just kind of ran together on him a little bit. Like Detroit put us out the playoffs when Chauncey was the point guard, so it just kind of ran together. But I don't watch Portland either. They're on the West Coast. Their time zones are different. They haven't had a good team in quite some time since Dame time kind of left. So I understand where Shaq's coming from, but then. Also, the way he handled it, he's going to be authentic and he's going to make a joke out of it and he's going to be light about it. But it doesn't take away from, his basketball knowledge and acumen. But what it does say is that his team needs to better equip him, in those moments so he doesn't have those kind of mishaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're just in such a micromanageable media cycle world that like just everything's magnified. Just everything, every comment, the cancel culture, the woke world. It just I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't. I think there's bigger issues out there. Yeah,
I just think it's because of the stage that he's on, he probably, one little gaffe here and there. You're right, and it's what Keyon says. He's not there for, Ernie's the stat guy. Ernie's the guy that does all the prepping. Shaq's just there to be the funny guy.
Those guys are so funny,
and
Barkley
it works.
and Shaq.
It works for them.
Man, those guys are so funny.
Yeah.
Great
Like,
ambassadors for the game.
man, who even knows you're watching basketball?
No.
Man, this is like Chris Rock and Kevin Hart, man. You know?
Yeah.
So speaking of entertaining basketball,
Excuse me.
we've had you know, an NBA. What do you guys think about an NBA Finals preview of the Celtics and the Thunder?
I I think that that's why I was asking Keyon earlier. I put him on the spot. I said, okay, right now, and I think we should do the same thing. Like right now. So Boston, OKC, potential finals matchup preview from everything I read and gather from my own little research. OKC, while record is incredible, they're not taken as a very serious threat. I asked Keyon, who's your team right now?
Yeah.
Who's the favorite? And so I'm going to just leave it for him to answer because I'm going to defer to him.
It's pretty simple for me. Like, in order to be the best, you have to beat the best. The Celtics are the defending champions, and so I think they're the favorites in my book. The way that they play, the amount of 3-pointers that they make and the percentage that they shoot it at, the continuity and the ability to play together, the X factors that they have off the bench. They have guys who can come off the bench and, make an impact defensively, make an impact, making threes. The Boston Celtics are a complete team. Jaylen Brown, I think he shot 5 for 15 last night. He had an off game. OKC got the victory. But in a 7-game series, I just feel like the Celtics are the team to beat, not only in the East, but in the NBA.
Jeez. So you think they're I mean, it goes down from coaching to their bench. That's a pretty stack. What would be the team in the East you think they would give him besides actually, what team in the East would give him any
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Cleveland's playing with some resurgence. I was just thinking.
Yeah,
like,
Cleveland
East.
is not a walk in the park this year. They have 3 All-Stars on that team. They're well coached. I think they like playing with each other. Donovan is like really taking his game a step back offensively in order to make his game grow more holistically. He's playing more on the defensive end. He's getting more assists. Cleveland is tough. They got a lot of nice pieces, but just I think in a 7-game series, the way that Boston has this defensive flexibility, they can switch 1 through 5. Porzingis is still out right now, right? And you remember how when he came back in the finals, the boost that he gave them last year. And Tatum is probably, and I know this might sound weird, Nev, this might sound weird, but I think he's the most underrated superstar in the NBA.
Yeah.
He is a guy who's undervalued, underappreciated, and not respected. For what? Because I don't know if he's charismatic enough. I don't know if he's loud enough. I don't know if it's because he's light-skinned.
Yeah.
His hair texture. I don't know what it is why Tatum doesn't get the credit and the props that he deserves. But I've known his father. I played against his father in college. Like, that boy is from St. Louis, Missouri. It is not an easy place to grow up. Just because he's quiet doesn't mean he doesn't have that dog in him. And I think he's the most underrated superstar, underappreciated superstar we have in our game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's coming from someone who knows, I defer to him when it comes to these things for sure. Tatum, you just don't hear, like, there's not like a whole bunch of noise behind him. He just goes in there and just gouges you.
Yep.
Like, quietly. And he's got, he was disrespected for that Olympic run. Jaylen Brown didn't make the team. So you got 2 dudes who feel dissed. There's a disrespect feeling, and they're the current champions. Like, yo, we're that team. We're each those dudes, and we're the reason we're the champs, and we're going to show you again. And so when you carry that chip, it takes you places. If you got that underdog mentality, you're a different puncher. And even though they're each making $300 million plus or whatever the number is, but they're not getting respect, and that comes differently than the money when everyone's making the same money. You know what I mean? When you want people to know, like, yo, give me my love. I earn it. I've earned it.
So what does that say for like a player like Zion Williamson? So he records his 2nd triple-double ever in his career the other night. And it just got me to think of how highly touted he was coming into the NBA. And to me, he hasn't really panned out. You know, he came out with all this hype coming out of college. He had his struggles with his weight management and things like that. But to me, he was supposed to be like the next LeBron, size-wise, speed-wise, you know, athletically gifted enough. But he's kind of just fallen off. Is it the market that he plays in, or it's just because, you know, some guys just kind of fall by the wayside and become, you know, just league players?
I think it's a combination. New Orleans is a smaller market, even though I think it's the best food on the planet. I could taste the Charkville oysters right now as I just think about them. But like Z, when he's on the court, he's special. He has a body type that is a little bit different from the NBA prototype body style, right? And he's had to deal with injuries. Now, couple things. Like, you could look at his injuries coming because of his weight, or you could look at it his weight being impacted by the injuries.
Right.
And you have to find that healthy balance. They got to make sure they have the right crew and the team around him that puts him in the best situation from a diet standpoint, from a flexibility standpoint, from a recovery standpoint. You have to put all the resources around him so that he has the best opportunity to be successful. Because we all know when he's on the court, he's special. He's unique. He's explosive. He plays downhill. He plays on both ends. He impacts the game, you know, in a lot of different ways. And he's a bright spot in our league.
Yep.
But if you don't have the right infrastructure around him, he'll never be able to cultivate and develop into the player that he has the potential to be. So I would like to see him just make sure that, you know, like, get his body healthy, keep his weight down, put a team around him that, you know, make sure his core is strong and all that, so that he can have some longevity so he can be on the court.
Yeah, I don't like where he landed as far as for an organization, not the city, but the organization. And you know, a guy like that, I think you need to have a little bit of veteran leadership around somebody like that. You know, just so much is put on these guys. And that's why another thing, not to switch back to LeBron, like, people don't realize, man, he came into the league and so much was expected of him, and he handled it like unbelievable, went to another level. Like, really, that gets lost in translation a lot of times. Like, man, so much was expected of that guy. But anyway, you know, Zion, he's like, was looked upon in that same expectation, maybe not as LeBron, but in current generation. And I don't think he ended up at the right. I was concerned where he was going to end up.
The hard part is when you're a supernatural talent, when you're a high draft pick, a lot of times you're going to go to a bad team.
Yeah.
And the league has changed. It's a young man's game now, so there's not a lot of vets around.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, the coddling. Yeah.
So it's difficult, especially in a program like Pelicans. They don't have the best program.
Like, I was thinking about, like, when Keyon was telling us a story last week about some of his veterans, when we were talking about Charles Oakley and some of the other things. Like, he landed in a situation, you know, there were guys, like, there were men he looked up to. They were like, yo, this is how you do it, this and that. But when you're coming in and your peers are your age, like, where's the the leadership and the support group? Yeah.
With all the talk now about who's going to be the next face of the league, do you still see Zion as like a possibility for that?
No, not at this moment. I think in order to be the face of the league, you have to be available. And until he gets his health under control, now we don't know what he's dealing with, right? If it's degenerative, if it's something that he's going to have to deal with, you know, the rest of his life, or is it something that he's not doing? Getting the right, you know, diet, you know, getting the right flexibility, getting the right treatment, you know, all his habits. So it's yet to be seen. I don't think he'll be the face of the league.
Great point.
Yep. All right, we'll shift a little more now to some football. So Le'Veon Bell is in the news. He loses a civil lawsuit by a default judgment for not showing up for a subpoena for a sexual assault. What does that do? You know, obviously, to give a kind of peek behind the scenes. So, how does that differ from a civil to a criminal judgment?
I'm not sure. You know,
So-
for me, it's one. If you get subpoenaed, you have to show up,
Right.
or you'll get a default judgment, and it might not go in your favor. Obviously, when it's something, you know, to this magnitude, it's tricky. because there's family involved, there's all these different elements involved. But there is a difference between criminal and civil. And I would love to be able to I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I don't make any, I don't hold that back or anything like that. But the criminal element to me is more important than the civil. If you want to hold somebody accountable, the best way you can hold them accountable is to make them pay for their crimes. And civil, sometimes, because of the time we live in and things like that, there's so many that people get accused of things and they get thrown out. So it gets a little bit murky, right? But my heart goes out to everybody involved. It's guilty until proven innocent. And like, it's just it's a stain on your reputation and your name that you just don't want to have, in my opinion.
Right.
Well, speaking to someone who can answer to this directly, not from the sexual end of things, but if you don't show up to a subpoena, you're basically admitting guilt. That's for one. Why wouldn't you show up to defend your name, your honor, your innocence, right? If in fact he was found guilty, I'm sure there's going to be a further investigation into that, because that's how criminal cases start, on the heels of a civil situation, because they take the evidence from the civil situation and now it's running in a criminal concurrency. And I think he's got a lot to be concerned about right now. A lot. I'm sure he's lawyered up.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to.
I'm sure he's lawyered up.
He denied, obviously, the allegations and stuff like that, but people advising him. I mean, why?
Well,
why wouldn't you advise somebody? Hey, you should show up for this.
Well, you can deny plausibility, whatever you want to do, but when the man comes around, you're going to answer to them, right. And that's just how it goes. Like you could tell the media whatever you want, but when they show up,
it's go time.
Back that talk.
Yep. Shoot. All right. So Shedeur Sanders, draft stock is falling. You got a lot of reports out there that obviously he's a not in favorability with a lot of teams. You have the Browns now willing to trade everything they have to get Cam Ward. What do you think is going on with Shedeur? That his stock is constantly falling now to lower and lower.
Well, I was given a little bit of insight on that yesterday from one of the teams, and they feel he's, and listen, as a quarterback, you better be cocky. You better be cocky. I mean, Keyon, you're a professional athlete, man. Do you not feel like you were that dude?
You got to.
You better, or else I really don't even want you on my squad, for real. But there's an aura or the way he carries himself that is suspect in some NFL teams' minds. I was told that firsthand yesterday. Does that mean that's what it is? I don't know, but I'm telling you, the person who told me is directly involved in the scouting personnel department of an NFL franchise.
Yeah, I think he'll still be the first or the second quarterback taken, depending on who you ask, right? And so, like, when you talk about his stock falling, what is it falling from? Potentially number 1 to number 5? Right?
I'm in agreement.
And a lot of times, the lower, if your stock falls, it might be better for your career.
Yeah.
Because you might
ask Patrick Mahomes.
You might get a better team. But this narrative around this kid who doesn't go out, who doesn't party, who comes from a family of influence and success, his negative is that he's overconfident.
Yeah, right.
In an industry where confidence means everything,
especially that position.
Right. To me, it's undertones in that, buddy.
Yeah.
To me, it's undertones in that, right? Because he's not coming off docile, because he's not coming off like
robot.
Because he knows who he is, it's a negative when everything he's done on the field, in the classroom, in every situation in life, he's done it, right? And he's had to prove people wrong. So to me, I just don't buy into the narrative, that he's falling in the draft. He will be a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
He's probably either on most people's board the number 1 or number 2 quarterback. If Dart from Ole Miss goes before him, then that's him falling. But I can't see it. There's too many teams that need a quarterback.
I don't see that happening either.
Yeah.
And he's I don't know, like, that's just the hardest position in sports to scout. That's just my opinion. That doesn't mean I know everything or anything. That's just like, just look over the course of Tom Brady, man. Like, if you just look at, he's a great example, man. That guy would you have drafted him watching his scouting tape? I mean, it was comical. Except he's the best ever, probably. In the eyes of most or many. So that position is so difficult. I'll tell you what you want as a quarterback is you do want a guy who's got that arrogance. You better.
You need it.
You better. You ever seen Keyon was in the NBA 13 years. You ever seen a closer in the NBA who didn't believe he was that dude? They don't exist. And you don't want that guy anyway if he's not like that.
Yeah, I think,
questioning himself.
I think one of the best things that he said was, why can't I manage expectations? Do you know who my father is? And I thought that quote to me was just like, you're damn right. Like, who's gonna that's like
a big name to uphold, man.
Dude, that your dad is, a big personality.
Yo, that guy is like, he's one of the pioneers of swag.
Yeah.
And it's just what it is.
Right.
So,
like,
indisputable.
His expectations. Yeah. Why can't you carry a franchise? I'm excited to see what happens with him and Cam Ward, just because I love the banter that they have constantly. They train together, which to me says a lot. All right. Even though whatever you see on the camera,
they love each other.
They love each other. I think the banter off the field, what they do at workouts, like, you try to bring out the best in me, I try to bring out the best in you, is a healthy competition. And I like what they do.
They're young guns, man. They're young guns. Let them play, man. Like, it's exciting. You know what I mean? Like, the league is just shifted, man. It's all about dynamic quarterbacks at this point in time. It's what it is. Jaden Daniels, great example last year. Jalen Hurts winning the Super Bowl. I mean, man, this.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Jaden Daniels does in season 2 now. What do you think about Cam going to the Browns?
Well, my position on this.
Yeah, I know.
To
the Giants, in case you guys missed it. Cam Ward to the Giants.
Yeah, and I was ahead of the curve because wasn't the number 1 pick in anyone's mind at that time when I said that. And now he's the certified number 1 pick in everyone's mind. I really hope we don't end up at Cleveland. I hear that they're knocking down every offer. Anyone trying to sneak into number 1.
Shit.
And I hope you don't end up there. It's a career killer. It's a curse. Yeah. It's a career curse.
Like the graveyard in Baltimore for receivers?
Yeah, I've just recently read that. Yeah, I just saw that.
I saw that stat and I was just like, holy smokes, it's true.
Yeah.
You got Des Bryant, Deshaun Jackson, Odell Beckham, Anquan Bolden, DeAndre Hopkins now, Steve Smith Sr. I thought Steve Smith Sr. had a relatively decent career in Baltimore. So I don't know why they say his career went to die there, but I thought he did work there. Yeah. But how do you feel about
that's a run first organization. That's a run first organization, and that's just how it is. Yeah. You'll always be a complimentary piece as a receiver in that setup over there.
I mean, you'd got to think though, with Zay Flowers, they have a pretty good young receiving core. There were a couple of games away.
Broward County, by the way, shout out
from being in the AFC Championship game. What does somebody like Hopkins bring now to that dynamic? You saw what he did in Kansas City last year. What does Hopkins bring to that Baltimore offense? Or is it just another landing spot for him to just, ride off into the sunset?
Yeah. Well, most of the guys that you named, when the Ravens got them, they were past their primes, right? At the end of the day, Lamar was responsible for over 5,000 yards of offense. He ran for over 900 yards, threw for over 4,100 yards. And then you got Henry in the backfield who ran for almost 2,000 yards, right? And so it's a run-first team. I don't think it's a graveyard. I just think that they got to get over the hump.
They do.
Win a chip.
They got to get a championship for Lamar, man. In order for him to get established where he arguably belongs, he's got to win. He's got to win a Super Bowl, man. He has to, and I think he's on his way to a certified Hall of Fame career. And if he gets the ring, that's almost like a lock to get that.
And then the last thing I'll say, in regards to the Ravens, they're kind of in a similar situation. Like Tom Brady's, a lot of his favorite targets were his tight ends over the course of the years, right? If you look at Mahomes, a lot of his favorite targets is, the big fella,
Travis
Kelce,
Kelce,
right? And so they have 2 tight ends on the Ravens last year who combined for over 1,000 yards receiving. So they use their tight ends because they run the ball, because they do play action, because they have these formations that play to Lamar's strengths. It's not just a downfield passer. You got guys who can throw the ball downfield all day, but they haven't had the success in the regular season. Now, if it doesn't translate into the playoffs, at some point you got to kind of reconsider those different things. But at the end of the day, man, Lamar Jackson is a Florida boy. I'm always going to be Team Lamar and Team Florida boy.
Me too.
At the end of the day. And I just think that they just got to put it together. They got to get some wins. And it's hard when you got to go through Mahomes.
Yeah, I agree. So on the flip side, you have Joey Bosa not joining the 49ers with his brother. And then he decides to go to Buffalo for $2 million more. So what is that? One, what do you think influenced that decision to kind of go from San Francisco, which is playing alongside his brother, to go play in cold-ass Buffalo?
Buffalo's there as far as the Super Bowl. I mean, they've been inches away for 3 years now, right? I mean, their window is shrinking, even though they just re-upped Josh Allen. He's still young, but I don't know. I think that's the quickest ride to a Super Bowl, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't think they were missing a lot from the defensive end position. I think they actually played very well on defense throughout the entire season. They still have Von Miller.
Well, Von got cut, right?
Von got cut.
So
this
they
year
don't have Von.
They just
that's what I'm saying. Like last year they had Von Miller,
Yeah.
and I guess you're replacing him with Joey Bosa. So I guess that's going to be pretty much upgrade there. But I don't think
NFL, man, you're one play away at any time. The difference between winning and inches, man.
You saw that in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, inches. I mean, it's Buffalo. Their window is shrinking. At least KC got themselves a couple of rings. Mahomes still young, no matter what. But Buffalo, the window's closing.
And they don't even have a star. I mean, I guess they're still developing Keon Coleman. I would like to see what he turns into with another year.
James Cook's on a contract year. He wants to get paid. I know I'm hearing internal, he wants his. The business, man. Shit moves fast.
It does.
All right, and the last one we'll end on this one is, what are the Eagles doing with their roster? You see them making, they cut Darius Slay. They're making, in my opinion, again, I'm not an NFL insider, they're making weird moves for a team that won the Super Bowl. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to get younger? Are they trying to get
Can't sit
faster?
by idle. Listen, you can't sit by idle, man. That Super Bowl was years ago.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Next. You're into next season, man. Everyone starts over, 0-0. They'll have the ring ceremony, first game of the season, and no one will that's it. It's over.
NFL, not for long, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business, man. You're stick and move. Instant gratification. Get the ring, get out. That's it. You stand pat, you get run over.
Agreed.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. I kind of panicked a little bit behind the camera for a little bit, but
You got it done,
that's why I'm behind it.
He was the former Sixth Man of the Year. We brought him in to start.
Sometimes you get on short notice.
You're going back to the bench, Pete.
Stay ready. You ain't got to get ready.
I got the call from the bullpen. So. All right. Thanks for having us. See you guys.
All right.
Carry on the narrative. Best in class, so pray for my peers. Slingshot bullet, it's clear. Your weak shots couldn't pierce through bulletproof ears. A martyr, a menace. I'm leading horses to drink and pulling teeth like I'm feeding the dentist. Carry on the narrative.